All right, should we get to this?
Oh, Scots in Scotland. He's having a scotch in his coffee for breakfast this morning in Scotland. Played St. Andrews yesterday, shot a fucking 67. Amazing score. Of course, that was
On the front.
Of course,
On the front nine.
that was in his George. Yeah, it's got the front nine there. And now I'm going Irish. So yeah.
Wow, he's so dialed on his accents that he does Scotland and Irish.
Well, I had to throw that in there because you were talking about having Scotch, and then you had Guinness in Scotland too. So I figured it'd be only fair that I do a Scottish. Scotland have a
So
beer?
they have this thing here where they take a Guinness in a can and they pour it in the glass. And then they set it on this little device and press a button, and it's an agitator. So it creates the head in the,
that's
in the
pretty
beer. But yes, I am coming to you live from this rad hotel room in Aberdeen, Scotland. So a couple episodes ago, we had a conversation with Mr. Michael Beckwith, and tonight I wanted to have a similar conversation with you, Preston. I thought it would be interesting and instructive for people to get a sense of who you are and what your background is and why the shit you say is worth listening to.
Yeah,
So are you ready to sit on the hot seat?
I am. Yeah, I like the idea of people having the opportunity to get to know Michael and me, and we're going to be interviewing you pretty soon too, Scott. It's not like a necessarily a deep 3-hour dive into us. It's just kind of a, hey, how's it going? Like, what's your backstory program? But that way you
Yeah.
get to know us a little more, and I guess hopefully see a few things that make us tick.
All right. It was just a discussion on the formative years, right?
Yeah,
In terms of not necessarily life story, right? But your journey to becoming a man and some of the key moments along the way, and we can discuss as things come up.
yeah. I think I will go back to. So I was born and raised in Canada, and I think there were some key moments to becoming a man for me that had happened. My mom and dad split up when I don't really totally remember the age. It's somewhere between 4 and 7. It's funny because my dad's twin brother was actually just at my house a couple of days ago. Him and my aunt were just, long story, they were coming down, like bringing me my dad's ashes. And we had
And now you hadn't seen them in like forever.
I mean, I'd been like almost 20 years.
Wow.
It's been a long time. When I came down here, kind of lost contact with that side of the family. But growing up, so mom and dad split up. And then my dad was still in my life for a little bit. And then my mom remarried this man, Pat. And there was some really great years with him as a father figure. We did a lot of like skiing and snowboarding. And then they didn't work out. And that was elementary to junior high. And then somewhere, I believe in 8th grade, my mom met a man on AOL as she was splitting up with Pat. This was back in like the dial-up era. Yeah, about 96.
Wow. This might be the first non-creepy internet relationship in the history of the world.
It's a really beautiful story. They had this chat room. My mom's screen name back then was Smoking Gal, because my mom was a big cigarette smoker. It was a bunch of them that found themselves on this chat forum. But from the stories that I've been told, they all became good friends on this chat forum. A bunch of them were from California. They all decided to meet in California one weekend. And her and Bob, who was her third husband, who's my stepfather now, he lives in Arizona, and they had essentially fallen in love before they ever met each other, according to both of them. And then when they met in real life, they just fell in love. And Bob had always done group health insurance down in the States, down here where we are. And my mom was always in radio sales. And since healthcare and all that's free in Canada, his job doesn't quite exist up there. We moved to California, which is where he lived. And that kind of started like when you become a teenager and you start your journey as a young man, where you start to decide who you're going to be, not really even knowing who you're going to be. And that's where it started, in Diamond Bar, California.
Well, I guess real quick, I want to interject. Speaking of formative years, teenager.
Yeah.
A listener of the show and good friend of mine, I won't reveal my source, told me a story yesterday. His 12-year-old son
Uh-huh.
came sprinting down the stairs. He'd been up taking a shower or whatever. Came sprinting down the stairs with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. Just like, Dad, you're not going to guess what happened. And his response was, how many ball hairs did you find? And the kid goes, 3.
No way. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. The other day, Jackson asked me, because I don't know if it's a bad habit or not. Like, my kids are 6 and 7, and I still walk around the house naked. I don't live my life walking around the house naked, but if I get out of the shower and like, I don't feel the need to, I don't know if that's maybe hippy dippy of me, but he was like, Dad, why are you so hairy
It's free.
there?
You know, it's liberating.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. And my kids do too. Like, it's just
Well,
not
and
a
just,
weird thing.
it just, yeah, there's no stigma, right? You don't,
Right.
like, there's so much, I think, just negativity or awkwardness around it when there doesn't need to be.
Right. Sometimes folks get like, well, your kid's 7 years old. You want to be naked around him? I'm just like literally getting out of the shower, walking to put on clothes.
It's not
different
indecent.
things. Exactly. Right.
Right.
It's just very, I guess, what I think of as like Adam and Eve-ish, like where you're just.
You see, there's indecent exposure and then there's decent exposure.
Yeah.
And this is more on the decent side.
I don't know. I feel like when you say the word decent exposure, it's just open to like.
I don't know.
I also think when you say exposure in the context of kids,
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
it's not exposure at that point.
I like how like
Mike,
our concept of this podcast being like this learning tool to build men up and teach them and guide them along the way, which I do believe we are doing, is also sprouting this other branch of real life with us just hanging out, like talking like this. I quite enjoy this, that we're just human dads and goofball friends that just enjoy hanging out with each other, even though it's 5 a.m. It's pretty hard to be funny, but I feel like you're bringing the comedy pretty hard there, Scott, with your shitty freeze-dried coffee.
oh, that was
Did you just have one sip and then throw it away, or did you chug it all?
no, I chugged it all because I was tired and I needed it.
There you go.
Yeah, so we talk a lot about becoming better at being a man and the importance of being a good father, especially for our sons. I mean, good father for all of them. You and I, Preston, talk about it in terms of raising our sons to be good men.
Yeah.
Michael, if you have sons in the future, like maybe you'll have a caboose baby, right?
Grandsons. No.
Grandsons, yeah. Or just being,
nephews.
a good uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say being a good uncle to your actual nephews or your adopted nephews in our kids. Talk a bit about that dynamic of having gone through 3 separate dads. I had 2,
Uh-huh.
so I can relate to that to some degree. And
Yeah.
how do you think that influenced your perspective on being a man and being a father?
A lot of what my biological father and my mom's second husband, I don't want to sound too shitty, but I think a lot more of what they taught me was how to not be a dad. And I don't say that to throw them under the bus. My biological father's gone now. He's passed away. And I'm not really in contact with Pat, but I don't say that to take a jab at them and throw them under the bus while they're not here to defend themselves. But I guess if I'm just being realistic there, Pat taught me a lot of Boy Scoutish type skills, like out at the cabin and things like that. But I guess more so the way he was with my mom, and same with my biological father, and with me, learning things that I would not ever really want to be as a father to my kids. And then with Bob, my mom's, well, I guess my mom's not here anymore. My current stepdad, he had me as a teenager. He got me when I was 15. And I don't know how you 2 guys were as teenagers. I wasn't the worst teenager out there, but I started smoking cigarettes in 7th grade and would go to like river parties. And back in Canada, you only had to be 18 to drink and smoke cigarettes. So my mom would buy me cigarettes when I was in junior high, and then we would go to the liquor store on Fridays and ask people to buy us what did we get? We got these like gallon, they were called Blue Typhoons. It was just like this blue malt liquor stuff. And we would go, there's this big river that runs through the middle of Edmonton called the North Saskatchewan. And we'd go to this spot and have bonfires and drink this malt liquor and smoke cigarettes. And it was a great time. I don't want my kids to do that at that age, but at the same time, it was a great learning experience. And so when I got to the States, Bob was having none of that. And I got busted smoking weed by him. And he really laid down the hammer. You can't do this. You're a young, growing young man. Like, this is not good for your brain. This is not good for your future. I want you to be prepared to potentially go to college if that is your choice. It was something he wanted me to do that I didn't end up doing. I did it for a little bit. And he was just really helpful in steering me, because he grew up an orphan and in a home like with his brother, and had a really tough upbringing too, and was a little shit as well. So he knew exactly what I was up to. So he, like, bullshit smells bullshit type of a thing. And just knew I got to keep this young man in line so that he doesn't stray too far off the path. Even though the way he was, he saw that in me the way I was. I'm sure I'll see that in Jackson at some point and have to course correct him so that, he can be a successful young man and then one day a great father and just a good man for society. So that's what.
And
Go ahead.
And what about strapping his sister's Barbies to bottle rockets and exploding them?
I mean, come on. Don't we all want to do that?
Yes. Yes.
We're going to get some good fireworks this year for 4th of July, buddy.
Oh, yeah. We should start stocking up now so we don't. Well, actually, last year, we bought them the day of, and they were like
You got a good
60%
deal.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But I think if we start buying them like now,
yeah.
before they really get jacked, you were talking about how Bob really kind of laid down the hammer and was that maybe voice of discipline that you hadn't had previously.
Yeah, because when you are a young man, you think you know everything.
Of course.
As your hormones are kicking in, it's just part of the process of growing up. And you need a strong man to guide you through that. Because if you're just going to be let loose to do whatever the hell you want, well, then you end up what's going on in Chicago and all that type of shit. But I probably shouldn't say that's low blow, but it's true. It's like there's a lot of dads that are just not involved and not present, and they don't stick around for their kids. And this guy was not even my biological father. Like, if you're out there listening to this and you have a stepson or any young man in your life that you potentially can have an influence on because his father decided to just not be around, step up and make a difference in that kid's life. It doesn't take much. It's just a bit of love and a bit of grit, and you can guide them on the right path to just nudge them so that they can be a functioning man in society that will contribute.
So, yeah, maybe be curious to hear your perspective or thoughts on what were the things that he did or provided for you to help be that role model.
So I have this one memory where I had to take out the trash. I had to take the trash out of the kitchen and go put it in the bins. You know how we have like the rolling bins? I was in charge of the rolling bins, but my job was to take out the trash. And this one time I forgot to put the bag back in. I did that quite often. Like, I was really bad about that. And he got on me one time and was like, hey, you need to put that bag back in. That's part of the job. You don't just take the trash out, you put the bag back in. And I remember like telling, why do you got to be such a hard ass on me? And I stormed off to my room. And then my mom came and had a talk with me and was like, it's just a bag, but it's not just a bag. It's like this metaphor. He's not trying to be hard on you. He's trying to guide you so that you learn how to not do the right thing, but do what is asked of you and do what you know you're supposed to do. To this day, I still sometimes forget to put the trash bag back in. And Erica gets pissed at me, but I know I need to do it. And it's usually when I'm doing like 3 things at once in the kitchen, but I still.
He was just trying to set you up for success with your future wife, which is
exactly.
You never look at it that way when you're a kid doing these chores, but if you do something 98% of the way, sometimes it's not sufficient.
right?
So interesting.
There was that, and then there was also a few times I'd gotten into smoking weed in like junior high and high school, and he busted me like a couple times doing that. And I remember he just always knew, because I don't know if my mom knew and just wasn't paying attention, but he just wouldn't let it slide. You have to remember though too, I grew up in a house with parents that smoked in the house.
That's
So there's like a
different
bunch of
factor.
that going on. But they still knew. And I remember one morning he came into my room, and he just opened the door and he said, "All I want to know is where'd you get the grass?" And then he shut the door and left. And me and my buddy were in this room, and we were like, we're busted. And he just was always on me, as far as, not in a bad way, always on me, just wanted me to go in the right direction. And there was another time when it was in, I think, 11th grade. And by that point, I had a little band with some of my buddies, and we were playing backyard parties. And I had a curfew of when I was supposed to be home that I missed. I don't know if I was out riding, probably was out riding bikes. Like this wasn't a drug thing. It was just like I was out riding bikes too late. And I got home. I didn't call. If I was going to be late, it was like, collect call and just let us know you're safe. And I didn't do that. And I had a gig like that next weekend at a backyard. Not a gig, but just like a kid's thing. And I got grounded and I wasn't allowed to go do it. And I remember begging them, "These people want to see my band." And it was like 5 people at this dumb thing. And all my band members like, "Can you just please let Preston play this one show?" And my parents were like, "No, like, we set simple boundaries for you that you didn't adhere to." And at the time I was pissed. But I look back on that now and think, oh, man, they were so right, because I learned so much. I mean, and it didn't take me till now to realize how much I needed to learn, how much I learned from that. But it was,
But it's the whole idea of things happening for you, not to you, right?
exactly. So true. Yes. They definitely happen for you. And it definitely gives me perspective as a parent it's a fine line, because you don't want to be a dictator on your children, but you also want to have a standard just so that they understand how to be a good person, and that when boundaries are set and when rules are made, they need to be followed. Not because just for the sake of the rule, but just for the sake of in life.
In building discipline.
Yeah, that too.
All right. So I know my wife has been on the edge of her seat this whole episode.
Oh, okay.
So let's get to the important stuff.
All right. So you want to know about my first wife?
Want to know about your first wife, and then maybe when you interview me, I can tell you about mine.
Okay. I think I have a feeling I might know her. So, yeah, out of high school, I went straight to college. I really didn't have much of an interest in going to college, but I definitely feel like we are part of a group of kids, or an age group, where our parents or my parents didn't really have the opportunity or the money to go to college. So they felt upon themselves that we needed to go to college, not because it was what would be good for us, but because they didn't have that opportunity and we should go to college. College is fine. I have no issues with college. I just don't think it's for everybody. There's certain aspects. Anyway, so I went to college for a year. I failed out of my college and went to go to community college because my heart was not in it. Then when I was I went to college for music. I was going for guitar and stuff like that, but also you have to do your math and all that other stuff, which I just had no desire or interest. And even with the music stuff, the classes were amazing, but like looking down the road, it wasn't. There was no jobs I was going to do with it. Like a music
wasn't
teacher
giving you more value to do those
Right.
things. That's exactly we've talked
So-
about that before.
Right. It's not that I didn't succeed in it. It wasn't something I was interested in. So I failed out of my first year of university, then went to community college for a semester. And then I just told my mom, I was like, I can't do this. I'm wasting your guys' money, because they were paying for my college. So I started working at FedEx, and I met this guy, Robert, who worked at FedEx with me, and he had a band. And I was like, I want to come see your band. And so I came and saw this guy's band, and they had this girl singer, and her and I instantly hit it off, and we started our own band and ended up getting married. And it was kind of like this rock and roll Fleetwood Mac. We were just young and not dumb, but just
What was the
when you're
time period as far as like your
age.
life? You met her, started a band, got married. What was that time period? Out of
So
curiosity.
I started FedEx in August of 2003 when I was 20. I met her probably a couple months into working there. And by the time I turned 21, that next year we were dating. And I think we dated for about 2 years, and we wanted to move in and rent a house together. And we just thought we needed to be married to do that. And so we got married. We had a little family wedding at my parents' house. We wore these, it's funny, Erica makes fun of me because they were these Indian outfits that we wore. I don't even know if I have pictures, but it was bizarre looking back on it. Erica kind of makes fun.
Yeah, you need to
Or-
dig up
but-
some of those pictures.
Yeah.
I had long hair. I had mascara, or not mascara, like eyeliner on.
What
It was
inspired
interesting.
that? Was she Indian?
No, but she's a super creative, artistic person that's into all different cultures and stuff. And I don't know, it was just something that I don't even know or remember why she was into that, but she was. And it just didn't work out because we got married for the wrong reasons. We were just too young and didn't really know why or what we were doing. But it was an interesting experience doing that. When we ended up splitting up, it was heartbreaking. But at the same time, I definitely felt like I learned a lot about marriage, about being married. I mean, I still am, actually, if I'm being honest. Every day I'm still learning how to be a better husband on this journey. It's not really much of a story, Scott, for Kelly. I ended up meeting Erica, and by the time we got married, I was 30. But when I met her, she was 19, and I was 25. So I'm a little bit older than her. And my point is that
Robert.
I was going to shut up. But my point about that first marriage is I would love to tell my kids to wait as long as you can to get married. Sometimes you find the right person and you just know, and you just got to go. Like sometimes in life, the best way to learn is to make mistakes. But my advice would be to just not rush getting married. There is no rush to do that. But then I look back
Well-
at Erica and she was 19 when she met me, and it worked out really well. So
But I think some of that is just if you think back on the massive amount of change we go through from 18 to 25,
right.
right? And
Yeah.
and how, let me see if I can find this actually.
Well, I know that we're not fully developed mentally until we're 25.
Men, I don't know if women are the same, but
Sometimes women a little bit sooner, but in general,
yeah, men.
the,
what is it,
the
our
human
frontal-
species, frontal
yeah,
cortex.
well,
Yep.
yeah. Which is
So
so fascinating. When go ahead.
I got something to read.
Okay.
So this is from a sci-fi fantasy novel, right?
Okay.
But I don't know.
Like it.
This is probably the first thing I've ever highlighted in a fiction book, right? Like usually it's all just for fun. So he says, human minds are built to see a world of objects, but you are not an object. You are a process. You are the change taking place inside of you. The woman at the end of this conversation, he's talking to a woman in this story. The woman at the end of this conversation will not be the woman who began it. The woman who wakes up in the morning will not be the same one who went to sleep. It is impossible to fix a person in time. I could not pin you like a butterfly to a board any more than I could pin down a piece of music. Your essence lies in your unfolding. People resist this idea. They look at it, at their passions and say, these are me. They stare inward at their beliefs and tell themselves, that is what I am. He shook his head. Before the purple baths that invented the story, you looked at your strength, your rage, your string of victories, and you told yourself that they were you. When they were taken away, you nearly shattered. You stared into your well of fear and shame, and you thought, this is what I have become. It was, she snarled. It was, he agreed, but you are not done becoming. Not then and not now. Your joy is not you. Your sorrow is not you. Your strength is not you. Your failure and your flaws are not you. Your heart and your hopes are not you. That is what you must remember. And then she says, well, what am I? And he said, you are unfolding. You are the change. You are whatever it is that, in the face of misery and bliss and bafflement, keeps going. I thought that was pretty rad. And in the context of why I thought of it in this conversation was just this idea of, especially that in that time period, those formative years, the amount of unfolding or evolving that we're doing and growth and change. And you talk about figuring out who you are.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't just happen for most people at 17, 18, 19.
Right.
I haven't really heard of changing and growth as unfolding lately. I like that verb particularly because I think about something that's folded into many more dimensions or many more folds than you can see that are visible. I won't go on a massive tangent, but I like that quote. It was really, I think, applicable to
Unfolding Man. Welcome to episode 1 of the Unfolding Man podcast.
I don't know if it's quite worth rebranding for Scott, but things unfold, right?
Yeah.
Life unfolds, and sometimes it's for the good, sometimes it's for the bad, but most of the time there's a lot of it that we can't control, and there are a lot of things where, to your point, Preston, you have to make mistakes before you get on the right path or become the person that, you know, is going to marry the right person, so to speak.
When I look back at when my first wife and I called it quits and split up, I didn't want that at the time. And I'd seen my mom get divorced twice and finally find someone. And I was like, I've already failed like her. I didn't want to do that. And I remember being like really torn up about it emotionally. But it led to my wife who I have now. And every time, change is one of those things that is going to happen in our life constantly. Change always happens. And sometimes change happens in a positive way that you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. Like this, I was waiting for this change to happen. And then sometimes change will happen and you're not expecting it and you don't want it. And that's happened to me quite a few times in my life. And it never feels good when it happens. And it never feels like it's going to end. But it always works out for the better. And I don't know if that's because I have this attitude where
Yes.
I fight through it, and it's like no matter what the change is, it's like I have to make my life better, and that's what you have to do.
Well, this is I think a very elementary growth mindset topic, right? Is you take two people in the same background, same successes, failures, etc., and you put them in the same situations, and somebody with a fixed mindset is going to see have a negative action come into their life, and it can derail everything. Right. Whereas somebody else can have a divorce is a good example, a divorce, and use that as a springboard to obviously emotional pain. They're not just going to wake up the next day and be like, all right, I'm moving forward with my life, right?
Yeah, no, it's not right.
Yeah, Tony Robbins,
you take it as,
Joe Dispenza, Ed Milet, they all talk about how if you can take that worst moment in your life and change it into what becomes the best moment of your life based on what you've learned as a result of it, yeah, that's the growth mindset.
It's just a mindset
sure.
shift. Yeah. Just a different perspective. So yes, the answer is yes. That is why.
When you guys talk about that and the experiences that I've had, I can't wait. Well, I can't wait is maybe not the right term, because my kids are going to, your kids, both of your kids, they're going to have moments in life where they're going to go through these very similar situations on their own. And I remember my ex-wife and I, we'd split up. I'd actually moved out, and my parents didn't know yet. And I had to go over to my parents' house. I got to go tell them. And I remember going over to my mom and dad's house, and we were sitting on the patio, and I started to tell my mom, we're not together. I've actually just moved in. And I like broke down and sobbed like in my mom's arms. I was devastated about the failure that I had become. And I just remember being this like 25-year-old man, like just like, like, and my mom was just like, I've been there. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. She comforted me, but it's like, everything's going to be fine. It's no big
Well,
deal.
what strikes me about this is you saying that you saw her go through it, and to you, it not working out was a big failure as a result of that.
Yeah.
And it just highlights the importance of those influences that we have in our lives and projecting that forward to our kids, right? And wanting
Yeah.
to be like, it's not that I don't want my kids to learn from my mistakes, and it's not that I'm going to shield them from that. In fact, I think my wife and I are very candid and open and honest about the challenges we have, the problems that we face, the mistakes that we make.
Yeah.
And so I certainly want them to learn from those aspects, setbacks, whatever that I have in life. But it just further reinforces or drives home my desire to try and have the examples that I'm setting for them be inspirational and pull them forward, rather than the examples that I'm setting for them be, opportunities for the types of things that we don't necessarily know we're having an impact on our kids, but then it comes out when they're 25.
Yeah.
The idea of, I may have learned some things from my dad about how to be a good man, but I also learned some things from my dad about how not to be a good man.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just really interesting to think about.
It is. And we're not perfect. We're probably going to teach our sons and daughters a few bad habits, I would imagine. Since we're conscious of that, we're definitely working to strive much more in the positive column for them. So it's funny. I'll end with this last story, kind of. I don't know if it really has anything to do with anything, but it was funny tonight. So I got home from work, and the kids were in the living room. You know how the moms have all been doing their handstands and stuff, Scott?
Mhm.
So Ravanna's been like religious. She's been working on her handstands all day, and she's doing like these crazy handstands, and they're doing cartwheels in the living room. And they like to do this thing where we do Insanity, where we put on a Metallica song and like we mosh, and I like throw them on the couch and all this. So we're doing that. And like Jackson, they've got their tablets going and they've been video recording themselves doing their handstands and stuff to document it. And so they're video recording our Insanity thing. And Jackson is going in front of his camera going like, oh, and I go and give him a big kick in the butt. Like not a real kick, just like a fun kick. And he's like, ow, like he pretends like it really hurts. So I go and stand over him like Macho Man or the
Yeah.
Hulkster. I'm like, oh, and Ravanna comes up behind me to kick me in the butt, like how I just kicked him. But because my legs are spread, she kicks me right in the nuts. Like the back, she kicks me right in the back sack. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, like, cause it just like instantly hit.
And it was
And,
captured on film too.
And it was on
Oh.
film. Yeah.
Please turn it into a short.
Yes.
So then we're
Yes.
like, I'm laughing about this. I mean, it hurt right in the moment. And as we go to show this, like Ravanna breaks down crying. She's like so upset because she thinks she like hurt me. And I don't know if she's embarrassed about, but it's just this weird how kids will take things
Mhm.
differently. Like to her, I hurt my dad or I'm embarrassed, but we're trying to explain to her like, no. Like this was like a funny moment. Like that's totally fine. Like these things happen. And like I said, I don't really know where I'm going with the story, but I just thought it was funny that my daughter gave me a back sack kick tonight. So I don't know.
Well,
Maybe that
you'll-
might be a
you'll-
good note to end on.
So you're saying like sometimes raising children, it's like getting a kick in the balls.
Yeah,
Literally,
100%. Yes. So I think my last statement will be that's just a little small snippet of my life, and we'll give you a little dose of Scott here in a couple weeks. And there's so much to us, but I hope everyone listening gets to know us a little bit more. And as our journey continues on this podcast, you start to feel like I love podcasts because the more I listen, the more I feel like I'm just listening to a bunch of friends talk to me. It's a bit one-sided because I don't get to talk back when I'm listening, but we're here for you. And if you ever have any questions, reach out to us on our Instagram or our Facebook. We're available as we're growing this thing to help you out and talk.
Absolutely. If it's any concession, Preston, after I was listening back to my own interview, I had the thought of, oh my gosh, like I didn't really talk about half of what I wanted to talk about retrospectively. We've got 10 more years of character development in our story together, right? Where we don't have to get every detail included in here, but it's just some of the pieces, some of the parts of what got us to where we are right now. And it's fascinating to hear even the cliff notes, whether it's a highlight or a low light, some of those different stories.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by the Reclaiming Man podcast.
That's right. And our latest sponsor is still the Reclaiming Man podcast.